in the same report that we cited earlier in the conversation, 84% of leaders cited that financial pressure is their greatest threat, and nearly 3/4 are prioritizing cost reduction right now over the next 5 years, right? Betty, how are ongoing financial constraints changing the way organizations think about leadership roles right now, that structure, certainly the investment in a leader, again, as we look at specifically the executive and service line level?
Yeah, many of the systems that I've been talking with, they're consolidating roles or expanding leadership span to reduce costs and increase that accountability. So the structures are flattening. In addition, the roles that they are going ahead with are increasingly tied to economic impact. So they're prioritizing positions that directly influence revenue growth, operational efficiency, and service line performance. I also think we're seeing more integrated leadership models emerging, greater alignment between clinical, operational, and financial leadership, particularly within the service lines. And Dr. Freeman, I'm sure you can relate to that in your role.
Yeah, very, very much so. I think just to back up for 1 second, when you're talking about consolidating roles and regional roles, 10 or 15 years ago, we might hire a chief medical officer or a fill in the blank for a medium or small hospital. Now you're trying to hire somebody to cover 3 or 4 hospitals. And so it's a much more complex role, and it's harder to find those kind of people. Service lines, it's a very interesting topic. They kind of come in and out of fashion. And right now, I think the tendency that I'm seeing anyway is for you to declare 3 or 4 priority service lines for a period of time, and then the others are there operating in the background, but maybe not have the level of investment that you might spread if you were spreading peanut butter, right? And so you're going to pick your biggest opportunities or your most margin sensitive service lines for those priorities. So you may have different leadership in those areas versus the others. And to Betty's point, you may have 2 or 3 leaders over multiple service lines instead of 5 or 6 leaders. More work for those folks, more responsibility, and they have to be able to do more than one thing at once. And so they do get burned out, or they do look for other opportunities, and that creates turnover.
I wish it was as easy as spreading peanut butter. I just did that this morning. It was pretty easy. So maybe we can insert that. Rob, I'd love to get your thoughts on this too, from your perspective, where you're sitting again. What are you seeing there from a financial perspective from organizations?
Yeah, I would echo what's been said already. I think that's very on point. I would add that as part of the expanding span and scope that we've discussed with leaders taking on more, I'm seeing, some position redesign, role redesign that goes along with that. So it's not just, hey, I'm taking over the exact same thing, the exact same scope, but we are considering the impact of AI. We're considering other opportunities to refine these roles in a way that play to the strengths of these leaders, as opposed to just the traditional, this is the way it's been, this is the way it's going to be. So more in that strategic workforce planning, executive development standpoint as well. So a lot going on there. And as far as differentiation and hiring leaders that have more impact on the revenue, overall revenue of an organization, healthcare traditionally has, as we just said, we like to spread that peanut butter nice and thin and cover all the edges of the crust and everything else, right? But those days, I think, are gone. And when you consider that typically in a healthcare system, 16% of departments in a healthcare system deliver up to 60% of your revenue and up to 80% of your patient satisfaction scores. So there's going to be a lot of thought around, hey, listen, do we continue to operate in the way that we have? Do we continue to offer all of the services that we have traditionally offered in the past and that our communities may feel are very, very important? Those are some tough conversations, but that's where we find ourselves.
Mike, I know this is specific. You mentioned the rural part of this, right? Which is crucial, especially from a financial perspective. Rural healthcare systems that have a large rural presence face this more than ever. I feel like, again, what does this look like from your perspective? How are these ongoing financial constraints changing the way organizations are looking at leadership? Again, particularly when we're looking at service line and executives.
Yeah, really good question. And to piggyback on what Rob and Dr. Freeman have been discussing, this role consolidation and focus of critical service lines for growth is I think a strategy that most of the bigger systems are playing on right now. We are in a unique position here because we're the only academic medical system in the entire state. And even if you extend the state, the closest AMCs would be like UT Southwestern or Arkansas or Kansas. And so we have this huge catchment area. And so we've got to provide the services across the board to whatever patients are coming to our door. That being said, you also have to be diligent looking at, some of the traditional corporate functions and where can we consolidate in those areas. What services do we need to maintain? What are the types of things that AI and other applications could help augment in those services? And as we prepare for increasing financial pressures moving forward, that's a tack we're taking moving forward. We don't ever want to impact the care that we're providing. In fact, quite the opposite. We want to invest more in that care we're providing. And to the points made earlier, really impacting the patient journey, which has a huge interaction with patient quality, obviously. But at the same time, what are we doing in our back end functions to make them more efficient and consolidate those roles as we move forward?